Andre Wells was 44 years old, and until that Tuesday afternoon, he believed his marriage was solid. He had built Wells Construction from a single truck and 20 years of pre-dawn mornings into an 11-man operation that never missed payroll. Not once. He was the kind of man who measured twice, cut once, and trusted completely. That afternoon, he left a canceled meeting early and came home to surprise his wife. What he found in his own living room stopped him cold. A man he had never seen before, standing in his house, in his living room, holding a thick, rubber-banded stack of cash in one raised hand like a trophy. And Patricia, his wife of 12 years, pressed against this stranger's side, her head on his shoulder, smirking at a phone camera like she had already won something. The cash belonged to Andre, $200,000 from his safe. 20 years of emergency reserves, gone. What neither of them noticed, what neither of them ever once considered, was what a man like Andre Wells does when he decides to respond instead of react. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The mud came first. It always did. Before the sun cleared the tree line, before the first truck rolled out of the yard, before any of his crew said a single word to him, the mud found Andre Wells, red Georgia clay, thick as paste, climbing the sides of his work boots like it was trying to hold him in place. He never minded it. The mud meant he was there. The mud meant the work had started. He stood at the edge of the site with a set of blueprints spread open across the hood of his truck, one hand anchoring the corner against the morning wind, the other wrapped around a cup of coffee that had stopped being hot somewhere around the drive over. He didn't notice. He was reading the grade elevation on the East Foundation wall and running numbers in his head the way other men ran their morning news. Mr. Wells, he looked up. City Inspector. Name was Briggs, a short, deliberate man who wore his vest like a uniform and always arrived exactly on time, which was one of the few things Andre respected about the city. Briggs. Andre turned the blueprint toward him. Walk me through what you need to see on the east wall before we pour. They moved through it together. Andre answered every question before Briggs finished asking it, not to show off, just because he already knew. He had reviewed these drawings 3 times before he slept, and once more when he woke up at 4:30. That was how he operated. Not because anyone required it, because a wall poured wrong is a wall you tear out. And tearing out walls costs more than time. His phone buzzed in his pocket while Briggs was still writing. A supplier. He answered, handled it in 2 minutes, and was back on the blueprints before Briggs capped his pen. That was a Tuesday morning at Andre Wells's job site. They were all more or less like that. He had built this from nothing worth measuring. Not nothing the way people say it when they mean not much. Actual nothing. 1 truck. A used flatbed his father signed the title over on a Wednesday evening in the carport of their house in southwest Atlanta. The summer Andre turned 19. His father's back had given out the spring before. 2 collapsed discs that ended 30 years of physical work in a single bad afternoon. And the family's livelihood had gone with it. There was no plan B. Andre became the plan B. He didn't have a license yet. Didn't have a crew. What he had was his father's client list, written in a spiral notebook in his father's neat handwriting, and the knowledge of how to do the work correctly because his father had never once let him do it wrong. He got the contractor's license at 30. By then, he had 4 employees and a second truck. By 40, he had 11 men, 4 trucks, a reputation in 3 counties, and a company account that had not dipped below 6 figures in 4 years. Wells Construction was not the biggest outfit in the metro area. It was not the flashiest, but it was the one general contractors called when a project needed to be done right and finished on time. And in the construction business, that combination was rarer than it should have been. Darnell ran the daily operations now. Younger by 4 years, louder by a considerable margin, and the only person on earth Andre trusted to handle the business when Andre couldn't be in 2 places at once. Darnell knew every supplier, every subcontractor, every city inspector's particular mood on a particular day. He also knew when to get out of Andre's way on a blueprint and when to push back. That balance had taken years to find, and it was worth more than any truck in the yard. Andre was proud of what they had built, not in a loud way, not in a way he talked about. It lived in him quietly, the way his father's handwriting in that spiral notebook still lived in him. A thing earned completely, owned completely, that no version of bad luck or a slow quarter had ever managed to take. Patricia had come into his life at 36, a mutual friend's cookout, August heat, her laughing at something across the yard with her head tipped back. He had introduced himself twice because she had not heard him the first time over the music, and she had smiled at him with enough warmth that the second introduction felt worth it. The first few years had been good, real. She came to the industry dinners and sat beside him and asked questions about the work that were not just polite. She understood what it meant to build something because she wanted to build something herself, an interior design business, her own clients, her own reputation. Andre respected that completely. When she asked him to fund the startup, he wrote the check without negotiating, $85,000. He did not ask her to pay it back. It was an investment, he told her, in her and in them. He set up a monthly operating transfer after that. $3,500, first of the month, every month. Consistent as the mud on his boots. That was 3 years ago. He had never once been introduced to a client, had never seen a finished project she could point to. When he asked, gently, how the business was developing, she would mention things that were always just about to happen. A consultation next week, a referral coming through. It always sounded reasonable. He told himself it took time to build something. He knew that better than anyone. There were small things he noticed, and then set aside. A receipt on the kitchen counter for a restaurant he didn't recognize. A Tuesday afternoon when she'd told him she was working from home. He saw it, registered it, and placed it back where he found it. There was probably an explanation. Her clothes had shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way he could have pointed to directly, but something in the selection had changed. Brighter, more deliberate. She spent longer getting ready for errands that used to take her 20 minutes. Once, maybe 6 weeks back, he'd come in from the yard at 7 in the evening to find her just finishing a phone call in the kitchen. She ended it the moment she heard the door. When he asked who it was, she said her friend Keisha, without looking up from the counter. He had not pushed. He was not a man who pushed. And there was a coldness, not constant, not every day, but present enough that he felt it the way you feel a draft in a room before you find the gap. She would be warm at dinner and distant by 9 o'clock. She would kiss him on the cheek in the morning with the efficiency of a habit rather than a choice. She had started describing his friends as boring, his industry events as repetitive, his world, she actually used that word, his world, as something separate from her. He attributed it to a phase. People had phases. Marriages had seasons. He was not a man who confused a quiet winter for a permanent frost. He trusted her. That word, trusted, would mean something different to him in a matter of weeks. But on a regular Tuesday morning, blueprints open on the hood of his truck, red clay on his boots, Briggs walking back toward his city vehicle. It meant what it had always meant to him. She was his wife. He had chosen her. That was enough. His afternoon meeting canceled at 12:40. A text from the project architect. Family thing. Reschedule Thursday. Andre looked at the message, looked at the sky, and thought about Patricia. He hadn't taken her to lunch in a while. Not since the spring, maybe. She liked that Italian place on Peachtree, the one with the good bread. He could surprise her. She was probably home. He texted Darnell, handling something personal. "You've got the yard." Darnell sent back a thumbs up without a single question. That was the thing about Darnell. Andre rolled the blueprints up, tucked them behind the seat, and pulled out of the sight. The drive home took 19 minutes. He spent most of it thinking about the East Foundation wall. He turned onto his street just after 1 o'clock and was halfway up the driveway when he saw it. A silver BMW, parked close to the garage. Not at the curb the way a visitor parks, uncertain, temporary, close, comfortable, the way a car sits when the person driving it has decided they belong wherever they put it. Andre stopped his truck. He sat there for a moment, engine running, looking at the car. He did not recognize it. He looked at the front door. He looked at the BMW again. He turned off the engine. He got out. He went in through the side door the way he always did. It was habit. 19 years of coming home with mud on his boots had trained him to skip the front entrance without thinking about it. The side door opened into the laundry room, which fed into the kitchen, which fed into the rest of the house. He could leave his boots on the mat and move through without tracking the yard inside. He heard the laughter before he reached the kitchen. Not Patricia's laugh alone. Two voices, hers and a man's, low, easy. The laugh of someone who was comfortable, someone who had been comfortable for a while. Andre slowed. He stood in the kitchen doorway for 1 second. Then he moved toward the living room. He rounded the corner and stopped. The man was standing in the middle of Andre's living room like he owned the square footage. 30s, well put together. Linen blazer the color of sand, dark slacks, shoes that had never touched a job site. He was holding a stack of bills, thick, rubber-banded. He was bouncing it lightly in his palm the way a man bounces a tennis ball before a serve, casual and rhythmic, and he had his phone raised in his other hand, filming himself, grinning at the camera with the wide, easy grin of a man documenting something he was proud of. Patricia was pressed against his side. Her arm was hooked around his waist. Her head was tilted toward his shoulder, and she was smirking at the camera. Not a nervous smirk, not a caught smirk, but a comfortable one. The smirk of someone in the middle of a moment they had been looking forward to. Andre stood in the doorway. He took it in the way he took in every problem site. Completely, quickly, without letting what he felt move to his face. The cash first. The rubber band. The thickness of the stack. Then, the way their bodies fit together. The practiced ease of it, the lack of any space between them. Then the phone still raised. Then Patricia's arm around the man's waist. The man saw him first. He lowered the phone slowly. He did not step back. He did not drop the cash or shift away from Patricia, or do any of the things a man does when he knows he is standing somewhere he should not be. He just looked at Andre, held his gaze for a beat that lasted half a second too long. The look of a man who had already calculated the room and decided the math worked in his favor. Patricia turned her head. Andre. She said his name with the same tone she used when she remembered she'd left the stove on. Mild, almost inconvenienced. You're home early. She did not move away from him. Andre looked at the cash. Where did that money come from? His voice was even, quiet. The voice he used when something on a structure was wrong and he needed the answer before he touched anything. Patricia made a small sound. Not quite a sigh, not quite a dismissal, somewhere in between. Her chin lifted slightly. The safe, she said. It's fine. We'll talk about it later. She said it the way you tell someone the dry cleaning is ready. A thing to be handled at a convenient time. Andre stood completely still. He looked at her. He looked at the man with the cash. He looked at the stack of bills in the man's hand. His money, from his safe, in a stranger's palm, in his own living room, on a Tuesday afternoon. Something moved through him, deep and total. The way a building moves when the foundation shifts. You don't see it from the outside, but everything inside knows. He let it pass through him. All of it. He let it go all the way through and out the other side. Then he said, "Okay." He turned around and walked back out the way he had come. Behind him, he heard the man laugh, short and sharp. The laugh of a man who had just watched something confirm everything he believed about the world. "That's it?" the man said. 20 years? And that's it?" Patricia's voice, quieter. "I told you." Andre heard it. All of it. His boots were already on the laundry room mat. He went out the side door. He walked to his truck. He got in and closed the door. He put both hands on the steering wheel. He sat there. The house was in front of him, still and ordinary in the early afternoon light. The silver BMW sat where it had been, comfortable, close to the garage. A bird moved through the yard. Somewhere down the street, someone was running a leaf blower. 2 minutes passed. He did not start the engine. Then he did. He backed out of the driveway slowly, straightened onto the street, and drove away. Andre drove for 11 minutes without a destination. Then he found himself turning onto Darnell Street. He pulled into the driveway and cut the engine. The house was a brick ranch on a quiet block in East Point. Nothing flashy, everything solid. Darnell's truck was in the carport. The porch light was already on, even though it wasn't dark yet. Andre sat. He looked at his hands on the steering wheel. Construction hands, calloused at the palms, scarred at the knuckles, the kind of hands that showed 20 years of work whether he wanted them to or not. He turned them over once. Then he got out of the truck. Darnell opened the door before Andre knocked. He took one look at his brother's face and didn't say a word. He stepped back. Andre came inside. Darnell went to the kitchen cabinet above the refrigerator, brought down the bourbon and 2 glasses, and set them on the table. He sat down across from Andre and waited. Andre sat for a moment with his hands flat on the table. Then he talked. He kept his voice low and even. He laid it out in the order it happened. The side door, the laughter, the living room, the man in the linen blazer, the cash in his hand, Patricia's arm around his waist, the smirk, her voice. "It's fine. We'll talk about it later." The man's laugh when Andre walked out. Darnell listened without interrupting. His jaw tightened halfway through and didn't loosen. By the time Andre finished, Darnell's glass was in his hand, and he was squeezing it. "Tell me a name," Darnell said. "Not yet." "Andre?" "Not yet." Andre's voice was calm, final. "Sit with me first." Darnell looked at him for a long moment. Then he set the glass down. He leaned back in his chair and breathed out slow through his nose, and followed his brother's lead the way he had been following it since they were boys. Andre poured 2 fingers into each glass. He pushed one toward Darnell and left the other in front of himself without touching it. "The safe had 200,000 in it," Andre said. "Business reserves. I counted it 3 weeks ago." Darnell's eyes went flat. "All of it?" "All of it." The kitchen was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, someone's dog barked twice and went still. Andre reached into his pocket and set his phone on the table. He pulled up the bank's customer service number, dialed, and put it on speaker. Darnell watched him work through the automated system, through the identity verification, through the menu prompts, steady and unhurried, like he was calling in a material order. The account summary came through in under 4 minutes. Andre wrote the numbers down on a paper towel Darnell slid across to him. 17 transactions. 8 months. The amounts were staggered. $2,400 here, $2,800 there. 1 week, $3,100. The next week, nothing. Then, $2,600 2 weeks later. Never the same number twice. Never a round figure. Always under the threshold that would have flagged automatically. The total? $43,000. Andre thanked the representative and ended the call. He looked at the paper towel. He looked at every number written on it. Darnell leaned over and looked too, and Andre watched his brother's face go through something that had no name. 8 months, Darnell said. 8 months. She was doing this for 8 months, and the safe was the end, Andre said. Not the beginning. He set the pen down on the table. She planned this, he said quietly. Not to Darnell, not to the room, just the words, placed somewhere they could exist outside of him. Darnell leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. So, what are we doing? Andre was quiet for a moment. I want her to believe she got away with it, he said. Both of them. For now. Darnell looked at him. For now. For now. Andre picked up his phone again and scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in 2 months. Beverly Okafor. He pressed call and put it to his ear. She answered on the second ring. Andre. Beverly. He kept his voice the same way it had been all evening. Level, unhurried. I need you to start pulling everything together. Quietly. Business accounts, joint accounts, the LLC Pat's been running. All of it. Tell me what I have, what I need, and what I can prove. A brief pause. A notepad being pulled somewhere on her end. Does this involve a third party with assets? She asked. Andre thought about the silver BMW parked close to the garage, the linen blazer, the condo a man like that would have, the cash bouncing in a palm that had never done a day of real work. Yes, he said. Good, Beverly said. That makes it cleaner. Give me 3 days. 3 days, Andre said. Thank you. He hung up. He got home at 9:15. Patricia was on the couch watching television. She looked up when he came in. Hey, she said. Easy. Warm, even. Like a Tuesday. Hey. Andre leaned down and kissed her on the top of her head. Smells good in here. You cook? Leftovers, she said. Plates in the oven if you want it. I'm all right. Early morning tomorrow. He squeezed her shoulder lightly as he passed. I'm going to take the guest room so I don't wake you. Okay, babe. He went down the hall. He closed the door. He sat on the edge of the guest bed in the dark for a long time, not moving, not sleeping, just sitting. In the living room, Patricia reached for her phone. She typed, He's not going to do anything. He never does. She hit send. Then she set the phone face down on the cushion beside her and turned back to the television. Andre's eyes opened at 4:47. He hadn't set an alarm. He never needed one. He lay still for a moment in the dark of the guest room, looking at the ceiling. The house was quiet. Down the hall, Patricia was asleep. He could hear nothing from her room, which was how it had been for a long time now. 2 people in the same house occupying separate silences and calling it a marriage. He got up, washed his face, put on his work clothes in the dark, laced his boots at the kitchen table with the small lamp on, the way his father used to do, poured coffee into a thermos, left a note on the counter that said early sight, back tonight, and walked out to his truck before the sun came up. The sky was the color of a bruise going away. He went to work. At the Fairburn job, he was on site by 5:30. He walked the framing with a flashlight before the crew arrived, checking joints, checking load points, making notes in the small spiral pad he kept in his chest pocket. By the time his guys pulled in at 6, Andre had already flagged 2 things that needed correction and crossed off 4 things he'd been meaning to confirm. Nobody would have known anything was wrong. That was the point. He answered calls. He signed off on a materials delivery. He talked to the city inspector about a permit revision and got it sorted in under 20 minutes, which the inspector remarked was faster than he'd ever seen anyone move paperwork. Andre thanked him, drank his cold coffee, went back to the blueprint. Around noon, he drove to Beverly's office on the south side, parked in the back like she'd asked, and spent 40 minutes with her going over the first layer of what she'd begun pulling together. She was already separating business assets from marital property, with a precision that would have taken most attorneys twice as long. But Andre had given her records that were clean going back 11 years. Every transaction dated, categorized, filed. The kind of documentation most people only kept under threat of audit. You make this easier than you know, Beverly told him, not looking up from the folder. "My father kept every receipt in a shoebox," Andre said. "I just upgraded the shoebox." She almost smiled. Almost. He was back on site by 2. At home that evening, he heated up the leftovers Patricia hadn't touched. She came into the kitchen while he was eating and asked how the Fairburn job was going. He told her. She half listened the way she had for years, nodding at the right moments, eyes drifting toward her phone. He watched none of it register. He kept his voice easy and warm, and said exactly as much as he always did. She poured herself a glass of wine and leaned against the counter. It went on like that for 5 days. By the 3rd day, Patricia had settled back into herself. The cautious energy she'd carried on the first night, the careful, watching quiet of a woman who had braced for impact, was gone. She made dinner twice. She laughed at something on television and called for Andre to come see. She mentioned a project she was thinking about, the way she always mentioned projects she had no intention of starting. She texted Troy. "Told you." Situations handled. She believed it the way she believed most things, completely, because believing it was convenient. Andre watched all of it from the inside of a face that showed nothing. Each evening after dinner, he drove to Darnell's. They sat at the same kitchen table and went through the company books, physical ledgers and digital records both, page by page. Every asset, every piece of equipment, every truck. They catalogued it all with the same care Andre had used building it, marking what needed protection and in what order. Darnell kept the list. Andre kept moving. One evening, he drove back to the house while Patricia was at a friend's and stood in the master closet in front of the open safe. He photographed it from 4 angles with his phone: the empty interior, the door, the panel, the closet itself. Sent the images to Beverly, who had them incorporated into a dated affidavit her office notarized the following morning. The safe had held $200,000. Now it held documentation that it used to. On the 5th evening, Patricia leaned across the couch cushion and set her hand on Andre's arm. "Can I say something?" "Of course." She tilted her head, the way she did when she was about to say something she'd been rehearsing. "I've been thinking about the reserve situation. Those kinds of holdings, keeping that much cash just sitting somewhere, it's not working for us anymore. We should probably move it into something more productive." Andre looked at her. Her expression was open, patient. She was watching him the way a person watches a door they expect to open easily. "You're probably right," he said. "Let me look into the best way to handle it." She smiled, settled back into the cushion, picked up her wine. He looked at the television and did not feel anything he could not manage. Beverly called him the next morning at 7:43. "Andre!" Her voice had a different quality to it, still level, but compressed. The voice of someone who had opened a door and found a larger room behind it than expected. "I have the full picture. I need you to come in." A pause. "I'm going to use the word premeditated. You need to hear the rest of it in person." "Tomorrow," Andre said. "First thing. I'll be here." That evening he told Patricia he had an early client meeting and would be home late. She kissed his cheek at the door, warm and unbothered, a woman who believed she was holding all the cards. He got in his truck. He drove to Beverly's office. Beverly's office smelled like paper and cold air. It was a serious room. No soft furniture, no art on the walls that wasn't a diploma or a license, just a wide mahogany desk, 2 chairs across from it, and shelves of binders organized by year going back to the 90s. Andre had always appreciated that about her space. It looked like what it was. He and Darnell sat down. Beverly was already at the desk. 2 folders in front of her, closed. A yellow legal pad beside them with handwriting Andre couldn't read from across the table. She did not open the folders immediately. "I want you to hear all of it before you say anything," she said. She looked at both of them. Her eyes landed on Darnell a beat longer than they landed on Andre. A small, professional warning. "All of it. Then we talk." Darnell nodded. laced his fingers together on the table. Beverly opened the first folder. The forensic accountant she'd retained had gone back 5 years. 5 years of household finances, the LLC records, the joint accounts, the direct transfers Andre had set up to fund Patricia's interior design business. What the accountant found in those 5 years was this: Patricia's LLC had never had a single legitimate client. Not one. No invoices paid by anyone outside the household. No vendor contracts. No design fees. The business had a website, a logo, a professionally printed set of business cards. Andre had seen them on the kitchen counter once and felt proud of her, and it had produced nothing. It existed for one purpose only, and that purpose was to move money. Over 5 years, approximately $210,000 had passed through it. Andre's $85,000 startup funding, the $3,500 monthly operating transfer he'd set up, because Patricia said she needed consistent cash flow to build the brand. Joint account transfers timed around billing cycles to make them look like business expenses. All of it moving through the LLC and out into accounts Beverly's accountant was still actively tracing. Beverly said the number, $210,000, and let it sit on the table. Andre said nothing. Darnell's jaw shifted. "Keep going," Andre said. Beverly opened the second folder. She had pulled Troy Maddox's name through public property records. It had not taken long. Troy purchased a condominium 18 months ago in Buckhead. A clean, mid-rise unit, the kind of building that had a concierge and underground parking. The down payment, $67,000. Beverly placed a document on the table. A wire transfer record from Patricia's LLC, dated the same week as the condo closing. Amount, $67,000. She placed a second document beside the first. A commercial development in a mixed-use complex currently under construction in East Atlanta. An equity investor stake in the development company. Capital contribution listed at $95,000. The name on the stake, Troy Maddox. My accountant traced that contribution through 2 intermediary transfers, Beverly said. She set 2 more pages on the table side by side. Clean, annotated, each transfer highlighted in yellow. It originates from Patricia's LLC, which originates from your accounts. Darnell said something under his breath that wasn't a word. Beverly reached for the third document in the folder. A printed email chain, several pages, paper-clipped at the corner. She slid it across the desk and folded her hands. This was obtained through a mutual business contact who had his own unresolved dispute with Maddox and was willing to provide correspondence. Everything here is legally obtained. Andre picked it up, read the first page, read the second. His face did not change. He set it down in front of Darnell. Darnell read it. His chair scraped back 2 inches. "Sit down, Darnell," Andre said. "Andre!" "Sit down." Darnell sat down. His hands were flat on the table. He was breathing through his nose. In the emails, Troy told Patricia exactly how to move the money. Which account first? Which amounts? How to time the transfers so they stayed beneath automatic alert thresholds. He explained which transaction descriptions would draw scrutiny and which ones wouldn't. He wrote it out in plain, instructional language, the way a man writes to someone he trusts, to follow directions and never ask why. Troy Maddox did not stumble into this money. He built the pipeline and handed Patricia the controls. Andre looked at Beverly. "What does this make him?" Beverly didn't reach for her notes. "Wire fraud," she said. "Conspiracy to commit theft. Civil liability for the full amount we can trace through his accounts." She paused. "And if we take it to the DA? Criminal exposure. Serious criminal exposure. He directed the methodology. His name is on the assets. His own emails document his intent." The room was quiet. "Then we take it to the DA," Andre said. Beverly made a note on her legal pad. 1 line. She capped her pen. "I'll prepare both files simultaneously. Divorce and criminal referral. Clean and coordinated." Andre nodded once. He stood, straightened his jacket, and picked up his keys from the edge of the desk. He drove home in silence. Patricia had made dinner: chicken, rice, the green beans he liked. The kitchen smelled warm and the table was set. She smiled when he walked in and asked how the meeting went. "Productive," he said. He washed his hands, sat down, filled his plate. "This is really good," he said, and meant none of it. "How was your day?" he asked, and listened to every word she said. Beverly called at 7:14 in the morning. Andre was already up. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his second cup of coffee, boots on, jacket over the chair behind him. Patricia was still asleep. He answered on the second ring and kept his voice low. "Both actions are ready," Beverly said. No greeting, no preamble. That was how she worked. "Criminal referral and civil recovery. I'm waiting on your word." Andre looked at the hallway. The bedroom door at the end of it, still closed. "Hold it one more week," he said. A short pause on Beverly's end. Not surprise, just the sound of a woman adjusting her timeline. "1 week," she repeated. "Is there something you still need from home?" "One more thing," he said. "Then we're done." "Okay," Beverly said. "Call me when you're ready." He hung up, finished his coffee, left for the job site before Patricia's alarm went off. He made the reservation that same afternoon. Canella's, a restaurant on the west side of the city. Dark wood and low lighting, the kind of place where the tables were spaced far enough apart that you could have a real conversation. He and Patricia had gone there for their 9th anniversary. She had loved it then, called it the most romantic place in Atlanta. He hadn't been back since. He picked up flowers on the way home, pink and white. He didn't overthink it. Patricia opened the door and saw the flowers, and something moved across her face that she tried to cover with a smile. Not guilt exactly, something more like calculation. A quick internal read of what this meant and whether it required adjusting. She took the flowers. She hugged him. "What's this for?" she asked. "I made us a reservation," he said. "Canella's, 8 o'clock. She pulled back and looked at him. "Canella's? You always loved it there," he said simply. She wore the green dress, the one she saved for things that mattered. He noticed, but said nothing. They sat across from each other at a corner table, and Andre was everything she had been hoping he would become in the weeks since the living room. Warm, attentive, asking real questions and waiting for the answers. He ordered a bottle of wine she liked. He laughed at her stories. He touched her hand twice across the table. Midway through the entrees, Patricia excused herself. He watched her walk toward the back of the restaurant, toward the restrooms, her green dress moving through the low light. He picked up his fork and took a slow, even bite. He knew exactly what she was doing back there. She was texting Troy. Standing at the small mirrored counter in the restroom, she typed quickly, one eye on the door. "Told you, he's soft." She watched the message deliver, watched the check marks appear. She smiled at herself in the mirror, touched her hair, and went back to the table. She did not know that Andre had already spoken to Beverly about the documents, that Beverly had spent the better part of 2 days engineering the consent forms, that everything Patricia was about to sign had been structured to hold, not just to transfer authority, but to hold against any future challenge, any future attorney, any argument that she hadn't understood what she was agreeing to. She sat back down. Andre was already smiling at her. They stayed through dessert. Over the following 4 days, Patricia signed the paperwork Beverly needed. Beverly called them routine spousal consent forms. Business restructuring. Andre brought them home in a plain manila folder and mentioned Beverly's name and said something about updating the company's account authority for the new municipal contract bid. Patricia barely looked at them. She signed where he pointed and handed them back and asked if he wanted to watch something on television. He thanked her and said sure. The documents gave Andre sole operational authority over every Wells Construction business account. The transfer was entirely legal. The original company founding paperwork, which Patricia had signed 11 years ago when Andre asked her to be listed as a co-owner, contained provisions that allowed exactly this restructuring with her notarized consent. Beverly had drafted those provisions herself. She had been advising Andre on asset protection for years as standard practice, and those provisions had been sitting in the original filing the entire time, waiting. When Beverly called to confirm receipt, she said, "Her own attorney will look at these and have nothing to work with. They are clean all the way through." "Good," Andre said. Darnell had been moving on a parallel track all week. He had made contact with a man named Curtis, a former associate of Troy's, who had invested $28,000 in a real estate deal 3 years prior that Troy had collapsed and walked away from without a refund or an explanation. Curtis had not forgotten. He had been waiting for a reason to open his files. He gave Darnell 2 things. The first was an additional email chain between Troy and Patricia, correspondence that started 8 months before the LLC transfers ever began. 8 months of Troy building the plan in writing, laying out the structure, explaining to Patricia how the LLC would function, what it needed to look like on paper, how to make a transfer vehicle appear legitimate. It predated everything Beverly had by nearly a year. The second thing Curtis gave Darnell was a name, a woman in Charlotte, North Carolina. He said her name was Renee. He said Troy had done the same thing to her 2 years before Patricia. Different city, different amounts, same methodology down to the LLC structure and the coached withdrawals. Darnell passed the name to Beverly's investigator the same afternoon. The investigator reached Renee within 48 hours. She agreed to speak. Her story was nearly identical. The same timeline, the same romantic approach, the same careful financial instructions delivered over months until she was moving money she thought was going somewhere they were building together. Troy had disappeared from her life before she understood what had happened. Beverly called Andre when the investigator's report came in. "Pattern of conduct," she said. "Documented and corroborated. In white-collar criminal law that changes everything, the DA won't treat this as a domestic financial dispute. This is a predatory scheme with multiple victims and a documented template. They'll want it." Andre stood at the window of his office at the construction yard. Outside, Darnell was talking to 2 of the crew members beside the lead truck. The afternoon light was long and flat across the lot. "File both actions," Andre said. "Both," Beverly confirmed. "Yes." He heard her write it down. He called Patricia that evening from the driveway before coming inside. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey," she said. Comfortable, relaxed. He could hear the television in the background. "Hey," he said. "Just wanted to hear your voice." A small laugh on her end. "You're so sweet lately." "I love you," he said. A pause. Warm, unbothered. "I love you too," she said. He sat with the phone in his hand for a moment after she hung up. The yard was quiet behind him. The trucks were lined up along the fence, dark against the evening sky. He got out of the truck and went inside. Beverly called at 4:47 in the afternoon. Andre was on the far side of the construction yard, checking the tie-downs on a flatbed that was going out early the next morning. He saw her name on the screen and walked away from the noise before he answered. "The DA's office accepted the filing," Beverly said. "They've assigned 2 investigators from the white-collar crimes unit. As of this morning, Troy Maddox is an active subject." Andre didn't speak right away. He let the words settle. "And the civil side?" "Filed simultaneously," she said. "The preliminary injunction request is pending. If the judge signs it, and I expect he will, the documentation is clean, both properties get frozen before Troy can touch them. He won't be able to sell, refinance, or encumber either one while the action is pending. How long before he finds out?" "That's what I want to talk to you about," Beverly said. These things move through channels. Someone talks to someone. It could be a week. It could be less. You need the confrontation at home to happen before he learns about the investigation through other means. If he finds out first, he calls Patricia. Patricia panics. The story changes. When? Monday morning, Beverly said, before the business day gets moving. I want to be there. Darnell should be there. He will be. And Miss Arlene, Beverly said. Her voice shifted slightly, not softer exactly, but deliberate. She confirmed this morning. She's already traveling from Birmingham. She'll be in Atlanta by Sunday evening. Andre was quiet for a moment. He had made that call himself 3 days ago. He had not told Patricia. He had not told Darnell. He had simply called the woman, explained that there were things her daughter needed to hear with family present, and asked if she would come. Miss Arlene had said yes without hesitation and hadn't asked him a single question he wasn't prepared to answer. Good, Andre said. Monday, Beverly said. Everything is ready. Both files. Both, he confirmed. He hung up and stood at the edge of the yard for a minute, looking at nothing in particular. Then he went back and finished checking the tie-downs. He stayed after everyone left. Darnell had offered to stay with him. Andre told him to go home and that he'd call in an hour. He wasn't ready to talk yet. He needed the yard first. He walked it slowly in the dark. All 4 trucks lined up against the fence, shapes against the night sky. The equipment shed with the roll-up door that always stuck a little on the left side. He kept meaning to fix it, kept finding something else that needed the hour more. The small building at the back of the lot. Cinder block, metal roof. It had been a storage unit when he bought the property. He and Darnell had gutted it and converted it into the site office over 2 summers of weekend work. They had poured the floor themselves. He stood in front of it for a long time, put his hand flat against the cinder block. Then he did something he hadn't done in a while. He pulled up his father's contact on his phone, dead 4 years now, the number long since disconnected, and pressed call. He had never deleted it. On hard nights, when he needed something he couldn't name, he would listen to the outgoing voicemail recording, just his father's voice, the unhurried way he said his own name, the quiet authority of it. The recording played. Andre listened to the whole thing, hung up, stood there another minute. Then he called Darnell. Darnell showed up in 12 minutes. He brought 2 coffees from the gas station down the street and didn't ask any questions when Andre let him in through the side gate. They sat on the tailgate of the lead truck and drank their coffee and watched the city's glow sit low against the dark sky to the north. For a while, neither of them said anything. That was fine. They had always been comfortable in the quiet between them. Finally, Darnell asked, "You all right? For real?" Andre thought about it. Actually thought about it instead of giving the answer that was easiest. "Yeah," he said. "I'm better than all right." Darnell waited. "I know exactly what I'm worth," Andre said. 20 years of showing up. Every job, every payroll, every decision I made with both eyes open. He paused. "And I know exactly what they're worth. Both of them. Now, I got it in writing." Darnell looked at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. He took a long drink of his coffee. "Monday," he said. It wasn't a question. "Monday," Andre said. He pulled out his phone and typed a single word to Beverly. "Monday." Her response came back inside of 2 minutes. "Everything is ready. Both files. Miss Arlene will be there by 9. He read it once, put the phone in his pocket, and finished his coffee. He slept in the guest room that night. One last time. He set his alarm for 5, lay back on top of the covers, and closed his eyes. He was asleep before the clock hit midnight. Andre was dressed by 4:52 a.m., dark slacks, a clean gray button-down, work boots, polished. He made coffee in the kitchen, stood at the counter, and drank it in the quiet of a house that still didn't know what day it was. Beverly arrived at 6:15. She had a rolling document case and a leather folio under her arm. She shook Andre's hand at the door the way she always did, firm, brief, professional, and moved directly to the dining room table without being asked. She knew the layout. She had been here twice before, years ago, for business signings. She began setting up without a word. Darnell came 10 minutes later. He was dressed cleanly, which told Andre he had not slept much. He came in through the side door, the way he always did, poured himself coffee, and stood in the kitchen doorway watching Beverly work. He looked at Andre. Andre looked back. Neither of them needed to say anything. Miss Arlene knocked at 7:40. She was a small woman, silver-haired, with a posture that had never once apologized for itself. She wore a dark blouse and carried a handbag over her wrist. When Andre opened the door, she looked at his face for a long moment, reading it the way mothers read things, and then stepped inside. "Andre," she said quietly, "thank you for coming, Miss Arlene." She nodded once. She did not ask what was on the table. She did not ask what was in the folders. She had raised Patricia, and she was not a woman who needed every detail explained to understand the shape of a thing. She sat in the chair Andre pulled out for her near the window and folded her hands in her lap and waited. Patricia came downstairs at 8:10. She was still in her robe, her hair tied back, moving the way people move when they believe a morning is ordinary. She was looking at her phone. She turned the corner into the dining room and stopped. Her mother was sitting by the window. Beverly was behind the table, standing. Darnell was in the doorway, and Andre was at the head of the table, fully dressed, completely still, watching her. The phone came down slowly from Patricia's hand. Something moved across her face. Not fear exactly. Not yet. More like the first small crack in a wall that had been holding weight it wasn't built for. "Mama," she said. Her voice came out smaller than she expected. "What are you? Why are you here?" Miss Arlene said nothing. She looked at her daughter steadily and did not move. Beverly set the first folder on the table. She laid it out piece by piece. No speeches, no build-up, just document after document, placed flat on the table in a line that stretched the full length of the dining room. Bank records showing 17 withdrawals from the joint savings account over 8 months, $43,000, always just under the alert threshold. The forensic accounting summary, 5 years, $210,000 moved through an LLC that had never invoiced a single client. The notarized photographs of the safe, empty, dated, property records for Troy's condo, the wire transfer from Patricia's LLC, the same week, $67,000, the commercial development filing, $95,000, 2 intermediary transfers, both traced. Then the email chain. Beverly placed it in the center of the table and smoothed it flat with one hand. Troy's instructions to Patricia, detailed and deliberate. Which accounts, which amounts, which timing, how to move money without being noticed. Written in his own words. Patricia had gone very still. Beverly placed one final document at the top of the line. The criminal complaint. Both names, Patricia Wells, Troy Maddox. Patricia stared at Troy's name on the page for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Something that wasn't quite surprise and wasn't quite understanding, but was something between the two. Something arriving too late. She had stolen alongside that man. She had believed in that man. And here was his name, beside hers, in a document her husband had built and filed and delivered to a DA's office without either of them ever knowing he was moving. Andre had not reacted. Andre had built a case. He spoke once. "You looked me in my face every day for 5 years and planned this." His voice was even, quiet. It did not waver, and it did not rise. "I need you to understand. I saw all of it. Every number, every transfer, every email where he told you how to do it. I saw all of it, and I waited until I could make sure it counted." Patricia tried denial first. It was a reflex more than a strategy. That's not what it was. You're not seeing the full picture. Beverly did not respond. Andre did not respond. She tried reframing. Troy misled her. She thought it was an investment. She was going to pay it back. Her voice picked up speed, the way a person talks when they can hear themselves losing ground. Then came the tears. Real ones, maybe. It was hard to tell, and it didn't matter. Then she reached for their history. 20 years. What they built. What she meant to him. What he meant to her. How this wasn't the whole story of who they were. Andre let her finish. He did not look away from her. He did not soften, and he did not harden. He simply waited until there was nothing left, and then he reached across the table and slid a single document in front of her. The divorce filing, stamped that morning. "The house is in a business trust," he said. "It is not a marital asset. Your attorney will confirm that. You have 30 days to vacate. Beverly can tell you what's in your accounts." Beverly said the number without inflection. $11,400. The room was completely silent. Miss Arlene stood slowly. She crossed to where Andre was sitting and took his hand in both of hers and squeezed it. Once, firm and deliberate. She looked at him with an expression that held everything she was not going to say out loud. Then she walked out of the dining room, through the hallway, and out the front door, without a single word to her daughter. Patricia sat alone at the table. The documents were still spread in front of her. She stared at them for a moment, then at the empty chair where her mother had been. She reached for her phone. She found Troy's name and pressed call. It rang. It rang again. It rang a third time. Troy Maddox did not answer. The conference room was small and deliberately plain. A rectangular table, 4 chairs, a window with the blinds drawn at an angle that let in light, but not a view. The kind of room designed to make people feel the walls. Troy Maddox had been in the chair for 11 minutes. His phone was face down on the table in front of him. He had placed it there himself, trying to look cooperative, trying to look like a man with nothing to hide. He had smiled when the 2 investigators introduced themselves. He had even offered to get coffee from the machine in the hallway. They had declined. Now investigator Dinah Marsh, mid-40s, reading glasses pushed up into her hair, a yellow legal pad in front of her, set a single printed document on the table and turned it to face him. "Mr. Maddox," she said, "can you walk us through this wire transfer? $67,000. Originated from an LLC account registered to Patricia Wells, October of last year. Landed in a holding account you controlled 48 hours before the down payment was submitted on the Parkview unit." Troy looked at the document. He kept his expression relaxed, measured. He had been in rooms before. He knew how to read a room. "That was a personal investment arrangement," he said. "Patricia and I had discussed going in together on the property. She contributed capital. It was informal." Marsh wrote something on her pad without looking up. The second investigator, a younger man named Carver, who had not yet said a single word, turned over his own document and placed it beside the first. It was the email chain. Troy recognized it immediately. He felt something shift in his chest, small and fast, like a stone dropping into still water. He did not let it reach his face. His phone vibrated against the table. He did not look at it. "The email on page 3, Carver said, speaking for the first time. His voice was calm and completely flat. "You wrote, and I'm quoting, 'Keep it under $9,000 each time. Wait at least 3 weeks between moves, and never use the joint account. Only the LLC. The trail stops there.' End quote." He paused. "That's some specific advice for an informal arrangement." Troy opened his mouth. The door opened behind him. A man in a charcoal suit stepped in, set a hand briefly on Troy's shoulder, and looked at both investigators with the practiced expression of a man who billed by the hour. "Gentlemen, I'm Raymond Cole. Counsel for Mr. Maddox. I'd like a moment with my client before we continue. Marsh capped her pen. Of course. The investigators stepped out. The door clicked shut. Raymond Cole pulled the chair beside Troy and sat down and spoke in a low, direct voice. From this point forward, you say nothing. I mean nothing. You answer no questions. You clarify no documents. You offer no context. Do you understand me? Troy nodded slowly. He was still looking at the email on the table. His own words, printed on a clean white page, in a conference room he had walked into voluntarily, because he had been certain, completely certain. There was nothing here they could actually use. I just need to explain the context, Troy said. Because the way it looks… Troy. Cole's voice went flat. Stop. They let the investigators back in. Troy lasted 4 minutes before he started talking again. He could not help it. That was the truth of it. He had built everything, the blazers, the business cards, the easy confidence, the silver BMW, on the ability to shape a room with his voice. Talking was not just a habit. It was his entire architecture. So he explained. He clarified. He offered context the investigators had not asked for. He described the nature of his real estate work in broad, polished terms that contradicted 2 specific documents already on the table. Cole put his pen down and stared at the wall. 48 hours later, a judge signed a preliminary injunction. The condo was frozen. The commercial development stake was frozen. Troy could not sell either property, could not borrow against them, could not transfer them. Both assets sat under a court hold, while Beverly's civil recovery action moved forward. By the end of that same week, his development partners had reviewed the injunction filing and made a decision. There was a clause in their partnership agreement, standard language, the kind most people signed without reading, covering investors under active criminal investigation. They exercised it without a phone call. Troy's equity stake moved into escrow. He received a letter. The letter was 3 paragraphs. Everything he had built from Andre's money was now unreachable. Locked behind proceedings, he could not speed up, argue out of, or charm his way through. Patricia's attorney was a straightforward woman who laid out the situation without sentiment. The evidence was documentary and complete. The pattern of conduct had been established across multiple victims. Patricia's role as executor rather than architect was the only meaningful distinction available to her defense, and the only way to make that distinction matter legally was to say so, formally, to investigators in full. Patricia cooperated. She told them everything, that Troy had approached her, that he had designed the LLC structure, identified the accounts, set the transfer schedule, and directed every significant move from the beginning. That she had believed, for longer than she was willing to admit, that he was building something with her. Her account matched Beverly's documentation on every verifiable point. Troy's attorney called Beverly's office 3 weeks later to begin discussing terms. The plea came through on a Thursday morning. 1 count, wire fraud, no contest, full financial restitution as the condition of sentencing. Both properties were liquidated as part of the resolution. After court costs, legal fees, and the civil judgment Beverly had obtained, Troy Maddox retained approximately $4,000 and a felony on his permanent record. The real estate investor identity, the blazers, the BMW, the condo, the development stake, the whole carefully assembled image of a man who moved money and turned it into more, was finished. Not damaged. Finished. No legitimate development partner would work with a man carrying a wire fraud conviction. No financial institution would extend commercial credit. The rooms he had spent his life learning to talk through were simply no longer available to him. Beverly called Andre at 9:47 that Thursday morning. "The plea's been entered," she said. "It's done." Andre was at the yard. He was standing at the hood of the lead truck, with a set of site plans spread open in front of him. He straightened up slowly. and looked out at the equipment. Both properties. Liquidated. The civil judgment will be satisfied in full once the sales clear escrow. Patricia's deferred agreement is signed. She begins restitution payments 90 days from today. Good, Andre said. A pause. Beverly, what do I owe you? She named the figure. Clean, precise, exactly what the work was worth. Andre wrote it down. I'll have Darnell cut the check today. There was a brief pause on Beverly's end. When she spoke again, her voice was the same as always, composed, professional. But there was something underneath it, small and genuine. Andre, she said. This one felt good. He looked out at the yard. Morning light on the hoods of 4 trucks. Everything still standing. Yeah, he said. It did. 18 months. That was all it took. Andre pulled into the Wells construction yard at 5:47 in the morning. The sky still that dark blue color that sits just before sunrise. He parked, stepped out, and stood for a moment with his coffee in his hand. 8 trucks. They were lined up in 2 clean rows, the company name stenciled on every door in white block letters. The morning light was just beginning to reach them, catching the hoods one at a time, moving slow and gold across the yard like it was taking inventory. Andre looked at them the way he always looked at things he had built, not with pride exactly, with recognition, the way a man looks at something and knows every hour that went into it. He took a sip of his coffee. It was already cold. He got to work. The municipal contract had come through on a Tuesday. $2.1 million. A city infrastructure project Andre had been quietly developing for 3 years, attending the right planning meetings, building relationships with the right people, submitting bids that were thorough enough to stand on their own without any performance attached to them. He had not chased it. He had built toward it the same way he built everything else, carefully, without shortcuts. When Beverly forwarded him the award letter, he read it twice, set his phone down, and finished the estimate he had been working on. Then he called Darnell. Darnell was loud about it for both of them. 2 new crews came on within the month. Andre ran their orientations himself. Not because he had to, but because he believed the first impression of a company said everything about what that company actually was. He shook every hand. He learned every name. The co-ownership paperwork was signed on a Wednesday afternoon in Beverly's office. There was no ceremony. Darnell signed his name. Beverly witnessed it, and that was that. But when they walked out to the parking lot afterward, Darnell stopped at his truck and stood there with his hand on the door handle and didn't say anything for a moment. Andre waited. Should have been official a long time ago, Darnell finally said. Yeah, Andre said. It should have. That was the whole conversation. It was enough. The house was outside the city, a half-acre lot with trees along the back edge, and enough quiet in the evenings that you could hear things settle. Andre had designed it himself, modest, intentional, every room sized for what it actually needed to do. He moved in with a bed, a table, and a coffee maker, and he built the rest slowly. In the evenings, after work, he would go out to the small workshop he had set up in the garage and work on furniture, a side table, shelves, a bench for the front entry. He measured twice. He cut once. He did not rush to fill the house. He let each thing be finished before he moved to the next. It felt, in those quiet hours, like the right way to live. Beverly's package arrived on a Friday, a bottle of good bourbon with a card tucked under the ribbon. The card said, "Best outcome I've ever built." Andre set the bottle on the kitchen counter and read the card again. Then he set the card down beside it and looked at them both for a moment. He poured 2 fingers that evening. He sat on the back steps in the cooling air and listened to the trees, and he let himself feel the full weight of the last 2 years. Not the anger, not the grief, but the complete and total absence of both. The clean, quiet feeling of a thing finished correctly. Troy Maddox was working a leasing office job somewhere 2 states away. No blazers, no silver BMW, no rooms full of people who believed in the version of himself he had constructed. Just a desk, a phone, and a record that followed him everywhere he went. He moved through his days quietly because quiet was the only option a man with a wire fraud conviction and a finished reputation had left. Patricia made her restitution payments on time every month. She worked at a furniture showroom. She lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and she paid back, dollar by dollar, what she had taken. There was no drama in her life now, no schemes, no man in a linen blazer, just the steady, unglamorous weight of obligation, month after month, and the life that was waiting on the other side of it, smaller and plainer than anything she had imagined for herself. She had left one voicemail. Andre had listened to it once and deleted it. He did not think about her often. When he did, it was not with anger. It was with something closer to clarity. She had shown him exactly what she was. He had simply been the last one to see it. It was a Thursday morning, the yard moving fast and loud with the new crews getting organized for a big pour, when one of the younger hires, a kid named Marcus, 3 weeks in, eager and a little overwhelmed, came and stood beside Andre at the hood of the lead truck. Andre had the site plans open, a pencil in his hand. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Go ahead." "How do you stay so calm when everything around you is going this fast?" Andre was quiet for a moment. He looked up from the plans and out across the yard. 8 trucks in the morning light. All of them his. All of them still standing. "I don't react to what I see," he said. "I respond to what I know." He turned back to the blueprints. The crew got to work. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.